Hey everyone, welcome to another video of DC NBA Junkie, where I'll be discussing NBA related content basically every single day. I'm continuing a series called NBA Team Futures, where each day I'll be deep diving into a different NBA team and talking about my stance on each team moving forward from the NBA hiatus. If that sounds interesting, then feel free to tune in on some fresh NBA content. In today's video, I'll be discussing the future of the Toronto Raptors. After Kawhi leaving in the 2019 free agency, fresh off winning the NBA championship, the Raptors organization was faced with great pressure for this 2020 NBA season. The Raptors put away all the negative comments that questioned their overall talent by becoming second in the East once again, with excellent leadership from Kyle Lowry, Pascal Siakam taking the star role, and the Raptors team trusting one another and putting themselves in a great position for the NBA season resumption. Let's get to it. But before I begin, feel free to subscribe, leave a like, and comment down below how you feel about this Toronto Raptors organization moving forward after the 2019-2020 NBA season. Now, without further ado, let's take a look into the future of the Toronto Raptors. To begin, I'm going to talk about the team overview for the Toronto Raptors. They finished with a 46-18 record out of all the games they played so far in the 64-game season so far, and that got them second in the East once again. They are really well known for being solid offensively and great defensively, despite losing Kawhi Leonard, who was both a great offensive player and a stellar defensive player for the 2019 season. But in terms of their stats, the Toronto Raptors have been the best in the league in opponent points per game, only allowing 106.5 points, which is the lowest in the league. Fourth in three-pointers made. They were second in steals and sixth in three-point percentage, so a very good outside scoring team. And an 104.9 defensive rating as a team, which is second in the league. So they were very solid offensively, but just even better defensively with the inside presence of Serge Ibaka. You got the small but very strong defensively in Kyle Lowry. You have Siakam, who sometimes he's a little inconsistent defensively, but he overall is a very good defensive player. OG Anunoby is a stellar defensive player at the three, and just a well-balanced team just offensively and defensively. They have the next man up mentality that they've implemented more so this season because of the injuries they faced. And Kyle Lowry even had it in Pascal Siakam, and I believe in Serge Ibaka. But they've had some injuries throughout the season, and that next man up mentality has been a very important thing for this team moving throughout this season. Like I said, with the injuries, and Siakam's rise in general has been really impressive. And that's going to be my next topic in a second, but Siakam's rise has just been really impressive, from even last year winning the most improved player, but now getting that star role and being able to show what he has to not only the Raptors, but to the entire league, and that's why they're in the second seed right now. Next, like I just said, I'm going to go into the Pascal Siakam's potential, and I want to just talk about that specifically because he was the most improved player last year, only averaging 16.9 points per game from 7 points per game and averaging 16 and 6 rebounds. But this year, he's all the way up to 23.6 points per game. And in terms of his statistics, he's got career highs across the board in points per game, assists a game, rebounds a game, steals per game, and so, even blocks. But he's also increasing turnovers, and this is mainly a result of his increased touches due to the exit of Kawhi Leonard. Without that, now they have Siakam in the number one guy, so he's got the most touches on the team. And I'm just talking about his potential because he still has a lot more room to improve, especially since considering that last year he was the most improved player, and he's done so much better this year, and he could be a considered most improved player candidate again. But just talking, because his field goal percentages aren't the best. His field goal percentage is just down, and his three-point field goal percentage is also lowered because of his touches. And I know that he's only 20. He's a relatively young player in the league, speaking not necessarily as a, he's 27 years old, so he's not necessarily, he's 26, my bad. He's 26 years old, so he's not necessarily one of the oldest, but he's not necessarily young too, but he's still got a lot of room to improve. And, like I said, defensively, he's got some room to improve as well. But overall, like, just talking about Siakam, he's a great inside and outside scorer. He can handle the ball. He's kind of like a point forward, in my opinion. He's just a really great athlete and a great player for this league and for the Toronto Raptors. Just a really great piece, and I'm just really excited for what his potential could really make him out to be in the future. Next, this is might be a little bit more confusing to my next topic, but this is the salaries. I'm not talking about just free agency in general, but just about their team salaries, because the concern for me is that this is good though, but they have a lot of talented players that are making less than $3 million a year. They have about 6 to 7 players who are really talented, and they're only making less than $3 million a year, including Siakam, but he signed an extension that's going to kick in next season. But my biggest problem with their salaries is that a lot of players, including Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, OG Anunoby even, Chris Boucher, Terrence Davis, those players are underpaid for what they do, how impressive they've been this season. And the concern for me is even Fred VanVleet. And the concern for me is that these kind of players could easily get, there will be struggling teams out there like the Pistons, the Knicks, the Cavaliers, those kind of teams who have cap will throw out money to get players that are going to help their team. And that puts the Raptors, who are in a salary cap issue, in a little bit of trouble in keeping these players. And that I'm not even talking, and like I said before, because of the big salaries like Kyle Lowry, Marc Gasol, even Serge Ibaka, and even Norman Powell's lengthy, pretty decent contract for what he does, and that kind of puts that concern into those kind of players. And even for, like I said before, VanVleet's extension, he's going to need an extension if he stays with this team, hopefully, and that puts more, even a bigger struggle to signing those players who aren't making much money. And that goes into my next topic in free agency, the free agency view, where I just discussed how I think their free agency is going to be for the 2020 offseason. For this team, their notable free agents are going to be Fred VanVleet, Serge Ibaka, Marc Gasol, Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, Chris Boucher, and Malcolm Miller. Now, for this team, my biggest thing right now is that they're kind of tight on cap with Lowry and then even Siakam's extension kicking in next season. And they would have about $25 million, assuming that the cap goes the way it is. Assuming that the cap doesn't change due to this hiatus, which it probably will, but if it doesn't, they'll have around $25 million in cap that they can use in the future for if they let everybody go, which is not going to happen, but that's just a thought to think about. But for this team, the biggest concern for me is they need to sign Fred VanVleet. They need to sign him. They need to. Serge Ibaka is also a must-sign, in my opinion, a great defensive player. They wouldn't be where they are without his defensive presence, for sure, in my opinion. Marc Gasol, I would try to bring him back, but not for as much as he's making. Definitely not. I would try to sign him for way less because he's a good player. And I would even argue, bringing Chris Boucher and Rondae Hollis-Jefferson. Bring all those guys back. They need everyone there because all these pieces are a big part of why they are where they are, why they are in the second seed right now. But in terms of what their team needs are, they definitely need depth and they need bench depth and scorers, which I think some options for them could be Dwight Howard, a great guy who can be in their backup bigs. Not necessarily needed, but he wasn't making much money this season, and it's just like a throwing a left field kind of option there. Alec Burks, a good scorer who could come off the bench. Austin Rivers, they need some guards off the bench too, so Austin Rivers could be there. Michael Carter-Williams, he's had a pretty good resurgence this season. Carmelo Anthony for scoring if they could afford him. And these last two are, if they had that $25 million, they could sign like Danilo Gallinari, who could bring some good scoring as a 3 or even a 4, and you could leave Anunoby off the bench. Kind of gives them more offensive flexibility, and then DeMar DeRozan as well. Because they could bring him back to Toronto. It could be like the reunite, but reunion or. And one more option is Rajon Rondo if he was available. But basically, this team needs to re-sign all their free agents, especially Serge Ibaka, Chris Boucher, and Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, and Fred VanVleet. And lastly, my NBA season resumption prediction for their team, I think they can easily make it to the conference finals. The biggest struggle for them, though, is that they have a tough 8-game schedule to finish off to finalize the NBA seeding rank, the seedings. So it's just important for them to maintain their second seed, because this team, but overall, this team is the reigning champs. I have no doubt in my mind that they have the championship DNA. I know they don't have the biggest piece to why they got there, Kawhi Leonard, but they do have all the other pieces like Kyle Lowry, who's really amazing in the last year's playoffs, and even Pascal Siakam, a big piece in the NBA Finals for sure. And they have the offense and the defense, and I just think they could really surprise some teams, and they could make a potential finals appearance. It just depends on how far they go and how well everything from last year kind of carries on to this year. And my 2 questions I want to leave off on for the video are, how will they manage this free agency? Because that's the biggest thing moving forward for this team, is how they manage this free agency specifically, because of the quality of the players that are at risk of leaving, especially Fred VanVleet and Marc Gasol. I think they'll bring back Serge Ibaka, but Fred VanVleet and Marc Gasol are my biggest concerns, because teams like the New York Knicks have been really interested into him. The Detroit Pistons, teams that need a guard or a point guard to kind of to bring back the things that they've been missing out on, specifically the Knicks, because they haven't had that in a while. And Fred VanVleet, if you trust him as your starting point guard, that's a way to go. Fred VanVleet's sometimes off the bench, but he's been able to start as well, so there's that too. But they need to re-sign these guys. That's my biggest concern for them, because if they don't, then I think there's a lot of concern for their team. And my second question is, what if they traded for Bradley Beal? This is more hypothetical, but like in this offseason, if you re-sign some players, what if you brought in Bradley Beal? Because he's a great scorer. You might have to throw in VanVleet if you get him, and maybe a OG Anunoby, but there's a lot of upside with that deal, because Bradley Beal is not happy in Washington, and there's a great scorer there, and I think in Bradley Beal, he's a great scorer. He's averaging basically 29 a game. So I think that's a hypothetical thing. What if they traded for Bradley Beal and brought that kind of scoring to the Toronto Raptors that they needed, and maybe that can set them up for a good future moving forward. And with that being said, that will be the end of today's video. If you enjoyed, feel free to like, comment below how you feel about the Toronto Raptors, and subscribe. Up below, you'll see, up on the cards, you'll see my playlist for my team futures, the rest of the videos, so you can go check them out, and make sure to subscribe as well. And with that being said, thank you for watching, and have a great day.